Hi, everybody. It's good to have you here. This is a very exciting moment for me. This is someone who I've known before the birth of my children, and my daughter is 40 years old this year. So that gives you an idea of how long I've had time with who I call C in her work. She calls herself Cynthia Marie. So as usual, C, we're going to turn it over to you to just kind of give people a brief idea of yourself and just anything you want to say.
Sure, thank you. I'm really excited to be here too, Tantra. Thank you. Um, wow. Where do I begin? I'm hearing to begin when I was little and life felt very complicated. Um, what I discovered as I grew was what I saw, what I felt, what I knew. Um, I thought everybody did, but that wasn't the case. And so I learned very early to suppress uh, all that I was aware of. I've learned over time that I'm an intuitive empath. I am claircognizant. I'm clairsentient. I I'm a clairaudient. Um, what I see in the world, in life, and a day to day, is often different than what others um, do see and maybe can't even imagine. Um, I've spent my career as an artist, also working in environments that most people would prefer not to even think about being in this world. Um, I've worked with kids in foster care as an expressive arts therapist. I've worked for the state department of mental health and then juvenile and adult corrections. I retired from there in 2012. And with all that I walked through and all I experienced in those years, I really understood that I needed to understand me better. So I began to study and really dive deep into energy and how energy flows through all of us, the gifts that we are as energy beings, that life would not exist without this beautiful flow that moves through all of us and around us and impacts us. Um, and with that, I began to study energy medicine. And uh, I'm really grateful to say that at my age, which some people would go, what do you mean your age? But at my age, I was determined. For 10 years, I looked for the right massage school. And last October, I graduated and now have my license of massage therapy, which is interesting because in our world of day to day, in the medical model that still is pervasive in the United States, it's easier to work energetically when you have a license, a touch license. So now I do. And that's an aspect of what I do. Who I am in all of that is someone that is aware, that listens, that supports, and holds people as they move into their truth and their own innate wisdom. That is actually, I'm finding in these day and times, people are needing, being called to step into their truth. We're all needed in this world right now to make a difference. And so I'm glad to be here to discover what this is and where we go and how we can best serve and make a difference for these times.
You know, I think, Cynthia, the most powerful experience I had of all the years I've known you, which is easily 40, which kind of dates us, I suppose, for everybody under 40. But the phenomenon of being a sensitive and being an empath, I think my greatest education's really been watching your life and watching you. And because it really, I listen to people talk about having to protect themselves, which they do. But then you walk into incarcerated areas and, you know, you teach art and gardening. And I think it really points to the power of an empath, the power of being empathic, because when you go into those areas, you instantly touch people in a way, not you, but empaths touch people in a way that they need touch. That that goes to, it's responding to the deepest part of a human being, to be empathic. And I've always I've always I guess I've always been your champion because of that. And I remember the first time I remember meeting you, because anybody close to me knows I have very little memory. But I remember the first time I met you, I saw you shaking in front of me. I mean, like your teeth were going to come out. And I weighed a lot more then, a good 100 pounds more than I weigh now. And I just knew you needed a body, and my body would do, because I was sort of like the elephant in the fairy. And you know, I remember having you come up and sit in my lap and just holding you so that your auric field and your wouldn't, you and your auric field and your body wouldn't be so at the effect of the energy in the room. And it's really and also how often we've crossed paths without actually being in the same place. You know, one of my kids living with you for a while, and their father, by the way, after we divorced. And just so you all know the level of intimacy we carry. And and it's really an amazing adventure, everyone listening to us, to have been on this path with her, because we actually haven't seen each other in a long time. And I didn't want to miss this chance to tell the story, because we had always teased each other about whenever we retired. By the way, neither of us are retired. Or when I moved to New Mexico, why didn't we live together? Because when you're empathic, when you're a high sensitive, it's really not easy to live with anybody. And not only are you disturbed, or I disturbed, but the other person is disturbed. It's not used to feeling their deeper nature. And so I called her when I was moving in California, and because she was getting ready to retire, and she'd just gotten through taking care of her mother till her death. And it's just the level of generosity this human being has for life. And I said, why don't you move to California? And she said, no, I think I'm going to move to Arizona. And I said, okay. And then my dog, as you know, some of you know, died, and I knew I could go back to New Mexico because Lily couldn't survive the altitude here while she had a heart condition. And I'm calling C, and I was on my way. And I said, you want to share a house in New Mexico? And we hadn't seen each we hadn't seen each other in 11 years, I think, or longer. I mean, at all, in any way. And then she said, yeah. And so she moved in a month after I moved in. And I can't tell you the treasure it is to, it's not that we're abnormal, we are abnormal, but it's more that it's just a treasure to be in the level of respect and appreciation for high sensitivity in your home. And and to have someone that equally navigates it with you in a not that we don't spat, but we actually don't spat that much. And we do the resolutions pretty fast because we understand the impact of separation. We understand the impact of holding grudges. We understand the energetic. I actually see if you'd respond to that, because it's understanding this energetic of the cost of not being connected that that we move around with. And it's not like we're perfect, or in we got our own thing, but it is an appreciated phenomenon. Just anything you want to say about that?
Thank you for those kind words. Very generous, and mutually felt. When I worked at the state psychiatric hospital, in the 80s, I was really became aware of all that I had capacity for that I had suppressed. And I recently, for some reason, this one individual keeps popping up and wants to be in the field. This beautiful man diagnosed as schizophrenic. When I first saw him, he was outside and he was literally petting the grass and talking. And that grabbed my attention because at that moment I was aware of the connection he had, and it was real, but I wasn't awake enough to see. And over time, he became afraid of what he referred to as hair. It was his words, and his description. And in that environment, it wasn't understood and it wasn't treated kindly. And one day I just heard, "Show me." And we went for a walk. And he was nervous to go out the door. And this was at a time when the hospital had open door time so people could be outside and not in a fenced area. And so I put myself between him and the buildings and the trees and the bushes as we walked. And as we got closer to the bushes, he became more and more nervous. And he said, "I can't go there because of the hair." And I said, "It's okay. I'm between. We'll be fine. You'll be fine." Well, as we walked and I'm holding his hand, I began to see these lines, these beautiful milky white lines of energy coming from the trees and the bushes to him. And it was at that moment that I realized, first of all, I was waking to what I had experienced when I was younger. And I was aware that the energy of these plants, this life force energy, was reaching out to him for comfort, for communication. And so we talked about it and we walked. And within a few days of doing this, we were actually able to have a picnic under one of the trees as these waves of beautiful white lines, just energy came down and surrounded not only him, but then me. And it was at that point too that I realized some often our society has not been capable of being with those that are different. There's labels, there's, kids make fun of you, parents and other environments, they tell you don't make up stories, suppress who you are. When I walked into the prisons and interacted with those that were locked behind those bars and listened to their stories, I realized how many were sensitive and had made horrible choices to fit in, to belong, to try and make sense out of feeling so different and living in a world that just was not friendly, was not user friendly, for sure. When I first met you, and I think I was like a wisp of a being, and everything energetically affected me. I remember crawling into your lap and being held. It was like this. It was like I was able to anchor for a minute, because I didn't feel anchored in this life, and I wasn't anchored in the day to day. I chose many habits that were not beneficial to me. I ate poorly, I drank poorly, I was trying to fit into the world that I was moving through every day. And everybody around me was also, the staff were eating poorly and drinking poorly. And it was survival. And living within that just that constriction of separation and wanting to survive, or feeling like we have to survive in this world, was a moment to moment challenge. And every decision was made from that place of constriction, separation, and just feeling like needing to survive, even though all through those years, there's that feeling of, you're here for a reason. You're being taken care of. It's going to be okay, which made no sense. But it was the thread that carried me. And it was people like you that showed up in my life that had room for what moved through this physical form. And so my interaction in those places that are heavy,
And cruel.
yeah, very cruel, very, very cruel. And as I was waking up more and more, I was seeing the energies that were affecting everybody that walked into those buildings, into the behind those bars and those locked gates. And it was a challenging journey. It was an interesting journey, but boy, it has given me capacity as I've learned to navigate all of what I saw, what I've witnessed, and even as moving forward with the energy work I do, and what I see that is invisible to most, what I interact with that is impacting others' lives, is not not coming up with the accurate word at the moment. But what I can say in that is that there is so much more to life than what we see, people see in their 3D visible world. The
We have a
table is
very
not just,
lively, what she's saying is we have a very lively household from
we have
time
a
to
very
time.
lively household.
We have
That's,
we have visitors from time
yeah,
to time. I'll just bridge the gap here and say, and you know, it's a phenomenon in the field of Tantra Maat because we talk about uh, the difference between a relational field and objectification field, and in and what you shared about the man getting in relationship with what was trying to be in relationship with him.
yeah.
That's pretty much what I've observed for myself, obviously, and also with you, is that I don't know how to bridge that either, but I do know that there's a place where that each of us in our own manner have come to, just like you do with a physical being or a physical object.
Mm,
You start dealing with it according to your own terms, according to your own agency, and I know it may sound strange to people, but the beauty of all that for me, having her in my house slash our house, is that it is our world. It isn't something that we're trying to be normal and want none of that other relational field to have anything to do with it. It's all you tell me if this isn't quite the same for you, but it's all the same. Whether you're a human being or whether you wouldn't believe what we went through to figure out how to close an entry point in her room because she could something. This house is very lively. It's very lively, very energetic, uh, but it's just a technical I mean, this is what we do. The same way, like right now, we went everywhere from this figuring out to have a mirror reflect towards it so it could go back into trying to figure out what the little shrew is that's leaving poop all over the house. I mean, the point is it's same. That's what I'm trying to get said.
yeah, everything is connected, everything's related, everything is, there's not separation, even though on the surface it appears that it's you, it's me, it's that, it's a something. And my experience, especially in really getting the affirmation of working with this young man in the 80s, was you can't make this stuff up. It's real. It's real. And it's valuable to find a pathway for understanding and for allowing, and in some cases for embracing and embodying that which is each person's unique essential capacity to be in this world, and why and in that, just being in the discovery of what do we do with that, what is being asked of us. I know you, Tantra, we're the meta point in the vernacular of language of creation. We're a meta point, not but a meta point of the cosmos and the earth. And sweet Gaia holds us here. We've come from the cosmos in many ways to be a gift, the word that comes to mind is a leverage for life, not just humanity, but for all of life to continue to expand into its wholeness, its united oneness of love that is coming here and that is here, and it's waking up, and it's messy and it's complicated. It feels complicated, and it is complicated due to all that humanity has gone through on this earth plane. And we're in a magical point, aren't we? I really believe that. And being able to be held in an environment that is supportive and nurturing, and curious of what's occurring, and what's wanted to be known, and what's wanted to be held, and what is wanting to be made available here, is an exciting place for myself, and for some that I work with, even though it doesn't always feel easy and nice and exciting. But it's a magical moment of discovery and realizing that what we do know and what we do feel and what we do sense is actually very real. And being in the high desert, coming from the Midwest, where it was very dense, and now there's a lot of space, has been also an interesting journey of allowing within myself, and those that are around me, making room for is a nice place to be. Yeah.
That's right. I had two thoughts come to mind, and one was two things. One thing Cia and I said all the time when we got here is we're the happy minority. It's a very, very diverse culture in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I mean, it couldn't be more diverse. You could say it's pretty evenly spread, would be one of the ways to say it. And the other memory was, I'm going to call them street people just because they knocked on the door off the street, not because they're technically street people. But two of the memories of how joyful Cia and I have our own kind of fun. And two very joyful moments here was when one person off the street, Jen, we walk out in the backyard and she's laying in the center of our spiral for a good 5 hours, actually, meditating. And the next one is Texas Joe comes in onto the street, and he's standing in the backyard looking at the dragons and looking at the spiral, and says, and he'd seen me walk it, and he says, "Can I walk it?" So it's really fascinating when you create a world, and it is your world, the people that want to participate in that world find their way. They really find their way. And then a friend of ours is in, I'm not going to say where or who, but in another country, and a country where there's a sacred site, and she's been asked to remove the sacred things that are sacred to her, because it doesn't fit in the tradition. It's all these parts of, we're talking about, I loved what you said about the craziness of human memory right now and all the trauma we've been through. It's very hard to consider that we might be starting to create a new world. It's very hard to consider. And so people that have memory, they bring that memory, that past memory of something that was bad forward into now, thinking that it now must be bad too. And that's probably what you just said is probably the next arc, probably the next bridge to cross, I would say. the thing I want to say, the part I want to bring up though, is Ireland. And
Mm.
did the book, Cynthia Marie did the book cover for my Irish Tale of a Modern Mystic. And doesn't even know this, but I had the opportunity with the person doing the cover for my new book. I had the opportunity to take the picture of the back cover and the front cover and put them together, because if you open the book full, you'll see the whole picture and then it folds around. And the person laying out my book wrote me and said, "I hope you're not expecting this level of art from me." But I remember when I asked you to do it, it was because the book was an energetic field, just like all my
Mm.
books are. And she was the perfect person to wrap the book in Ireland. And just anything about Ireland for you to see in anything that comes up. And you can introduce the animal if you'd like to.
This is Alfie.
Also a sensitive.
Also a sensitive. His real name is Alfred. And unbeknownst to me, an Alfie is an Irish being that is magical and holds energy. And it was actually a friend of mine that gave him his name. He's been here with me almost 2 years. We're working on 2 years. When you were talking, there was a thought that popped in, and about how in our culture people hold on to the past and live through the memory that has been created because of the experiences in the past. Also, often influenced by their ancestor, the ancestry, the lineage that they've come through the bloodlines. And what I am enjoying for myself, and actually started in Ireland in 1991, is that there's a future memory that is calling us forward. And that when I and others move into that calling, into that which is reaching out to us to move forward, that's life becomes very interesting. And there's a co-creative unity that occurs energetically that can be very supportive as people become more and more clear of their memory of the future, and identifying that which they love and wanting to interact with that which they love more and more. When I was in Ireland, that first 10 days of many visits back to my other home, the one experience that changed my life forever was there was a group of us and we went to a stone circle, and everyone was out doing their thing. You were talking outside the circle to somebody, and I remember the energy moving faster and faster, and I was called. Talk about being called to, and something calling you forward, just like my friend with the lines of energy that were just reaching out lovingly. I was called to be on the center stone, and I went to that center stone, and I climbed up it, and I sat there. I had a camera around my neck. It was during the days of the old 35 millimeter. And I'd been taking pictures, they were fine. The camera was working well. But all of a sudden, I noticed that the camera was getting hot as it laid against my chest. And I began to feel fearful. And I'm looking around and I'm looking where everybody is, and they're all in their own world. And all of a sudden, I see these figures, these robed figures, in what appeared to be a ritual, holding hands, moving outside the circle in a very specific pattern of their step. And as they were moving, I felt like I needed to escape. And I'm looking between the stones of the circle, and then I'm seeing these figures walking past, and I'm not sure how to escape through their movement. And then I realized I had made the choice to be there. I was feeling the energy of an animal that had been sacrificed in this ritual. I was terrified. I was crying. Nothing could console me. It's time to leave. My camera's not only hot, but it's buzzing. Everyone's walking back to the cars. You turn around and you come back to me and you grab me and you pull me off the rock. And your words were, if you're gonna be an empath, then you got to learn to keep your feet on the ground. And I was like, and then you turn around and walked away. And I finally was able to get out of the circle, and I got to the car, and my camera was so hot, I took it off my neck and I laid it on the floor. And it stopped because I turned around to take a picture and thinking, this is crazy. I have to capture it, and my camera wouldn't work. This was the end of the trip. We came back to Columbus, Ohio, where I was living then. And I was invited to go to an old Italian Catholic church for a friend's wedding. I still had film from that experience in the camera. When we got inside the church, my camera started getting hot. I literally it was so hot, I had to take it off, open it up. I took the battery out of it because the battery was so hot, and I laid them separately. After the service, I put everything back together. I finished the roll of film. I was able to get it exposed. The pictures came out fine, but it was whatever happened in that space carried back into my experience in Ohio. And because it was my experience, it was real. There's still uncertainty about what really was happening. But that was another moment when I became so clear that what I experience and what I see and what I know in this world is unseen. And we are all moving through those energies. And I mean, I probably could write a book about all my experiences in Ireland and the people I've met and the leprechauns I've danced with and wanted to call me out in the rain to play with them. So many stories, but there's an unseen world that is really, for some of us, tangible. And we live it.
Yeah, and very much out to restore this planet in her
Yes.
forms.
Oh.
Very much so. That's what I feel so strong right now. And that it's so real for a human being that they're alone in the universe. I can't imagine, for most human beings, I can't imagine what it could be like to find out you're not in a tangible manner.
Right.
And you and I already from birth, were having to deal with the fact that the veils weren't closed to us. And so we gained a kind of a weird muscle because of having to cope with it at such an early age. And
Yeah.
I do, it is one of my curiosities. It is one of my interests of because by the time you're an adult or considered an adult, you have been practiced in shutting those doors. You've become practiced, and a lot of what I'm seeing now is I'm just seeing people frenetically trying to get answers to problems when actually those problems accrued because of the world we've been living in. And it's very hard to figure out how to redirect them to just go find their world. And I know that's your work.
It
I know
is.
that's in mine too, but your work in a very specific way. Just anything you'd like to say about that?
Something was what I was noticing before the pandemic was people were getting more and more curious and feeling a very strong desire, need, frustration, because they knew it was like they would go to work and they had to leave their soul at the door. And in the pandemic, with things closing down, so many people I interacted with were so grateful. Now their comments were like, now I have a reason to not have to go outside and deal with the rest of life. It feels safer to be in my space. Me and my dog are really happy together. It was challenging to come out and even consider coming to this group because I would have to be interacting with other people, because it was like the layers were being pulled off, and people, their vulnerability and their rawness was coming to the surface. People have not had, excuse me, people have not had to be so guarded and protected and armored, because they were almost given permission to not have to go out and interact with others and go into a work environment where they felt their life force just being stripped from them because of the culture that was so pervasive. As people, and all of us are now coming out of this pandemic, and sure, there's many viruses and there's a lot of unknowns going on, but as people have been venturing out more and more, or being called back to work, there's a hunger and a very strong desire to, and almost it feels life-threatening for some, to even imagine that what they lived before that time, they have to go back to. They can't go back. There's no going back. And there's not a document that says this is how you do it. It's A, B, and C. We're all navigating and finding each other to support this movement and this life that is calling us forward. We're being invited to find each other as a support network and find those that can help guide and can hold all of us when we're feeling vulnerable. And that includes me, with all that I've lived and consciously been aware of for a number of decades. There's still more to be revealed. And people the way showers are needed right now. I really think of us as guardians and way showers. We've been the boots on the ground, slugging through the mud, occasionally losing the boot as we pulled our foot out, hence the bogs in Ireland. But it's a very tangible truth of how the energy on this planet has been so dense and so conditioned and so thwarted and I don't say that word lightly at all. But there's a goodness that is calling people, and there's a heart, a quest of being heart-centered and living from the heart, not from the thoughts, not from the head. For so long, we've all walked around as if there was this invisible board or barrier between our thoughts and what our body was informing us. And our bodies are the sentient, have the sentient intelligence, as does our brain. But when the brain and our mind begins to be consciously aware of how the body is informing accurately through heart resonance and through vibration, and we then have an opportunity to, I think we all have an opportunity to be more real, like in the Velveteen Rabbit. We've been rubbed and rubbed and rubbed, and now that protective barrier is coming off, and we have an opportunity to be real. Yeah.
It ain't easy to be real.
It ain't easy.
I wanted to make sure that the listening audience got to. I want to share something about how you and I experience what I'm going to call synchronic time. For me and the work I do, that's my excitement. My excitement is we're living in be here now time. And be here now doesn't have a past or a future. But if we're here now, we can hear the future calling. So that's kind of the frame. But I don't remember the incident, and if you remember it, you can tell me, because it's, me, my lack of memory. But I can do this morning. So this morning, we walked the dogs, 16-degree weather, and then we came back. And so I have an hour before we were going to do this call. And after I get back from walking Kevin, I spend an hour and I just go into the different social medias and our Tappa Talk, all these different things that I have. And I'm watching what's unfolding. So that's basically what I'm doing. So I thought it was very interesting this morning, because all of a sudden there's something C asked me a question, and she said, how do I have the photos from WhatsApp stop coming on my phone? And I thought I knew the answer, but I couldn't find it. So the first thing I did when I came in here and sat down is I went to see where I could find it. Well, I found something on WhatsApp I didn't even know was there. I found that all the recordings, the simple messages I had left with that thread, were still in the thread, were still recorded, and that they could very easily be reposted somewhere. I also found out that I walk in and there's this video, because now I can find all the things on WhatsApp. And the video was perfect for today, which is all about, I posted it on Instagram and Facebook, all about who we came to be and who we came to be as part of this earth and her self-expressions. So it's that kind of weirdness that we live, but it's the one where you almost said something to me and it turned out to be real. Do you remember it? I don't know if you remember. It was something about, was it anyway, she said something. She said, I wish I'd said to you before you left about this thing. And then it turned out that what she'd said, what she didn't say, turned out to be real. So I said to her, okay, from now on, we neither of, do you remember it yet, the story?
Um, I heard a thought to say to you about it. I think it was health related,
It was.
and something in my thoughts came up and said, "Oh no, you can't say that." Then we had the conversation down the road, and I said, "Well, I almost said that."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but that's kind of what it's like here. She'll come in with a dream, and then there'll be a piece of the dream that's correlate with my dream. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is we are empathic, the two of us. We are sensitives. We are voyants, whether we're clairvoyant or clairaudient, but so is every other human being.
Yes.
But it allows for a simplicity. And I earlier talking about the complexity that has happened out of everything being so screwed up for so long. But and I was waiting for you to say, which I'll now say, but when it all breaks apart, there's this amazing simplicity. There's this amazing simplicity of intuition and coincidence and synchronicity and just be here now, being with what there is to be with, which then seems to open up these gateways to reflections. Like I said, hindsight's more powerful than foresight right now, because then in hindsight, C and I could have so often said, wow, look at that pattern. We didn't see it at the time, but it creates a certainty. It creates a certainty much more grounded than logic.
Yeah, there's where I notice here, and I'm listening with others, where I used to live was something occurs and I'm trying to figure it out through my thoughts. And my thoughts are all from the past. When I allow myself to be here in the moment and just notice what happens in my body, notice what the thoughts come up, notice what color the sky is today. When I just be in the present moment of noticing and then recognizing as a sentient person, as an empath, oh, this isn't all mine. My goodness, I am feeling the world. I am feeling that plant. I am feeling the sore throat that someone's having or the back pain that someone's having. It's not mine. When I have started paid attention, it gives me a different choice, a choice of movement that is very freeing, very life enhancing, because what used to happen and still catches occasionally, especially if it's a pattern that's very deep seated, is when there's an experience and it's felt in the body, so it becomes real and it's mine. Well, of course it's my body. But as people are beginning to understand how the energies are moving and supporting and the empathic response is occurring, and then can go, oh, maybe that's not mine, because 2 minutes ago I felt fine. Someone walked into that room that I was in, and all of a sudden I felt like I was going to get sick, or I had a shoulder pain. And it makes room for consideration of how we are all of us are so affected by the empathic response and the energies that move through our environments moment to moment. And the news media, social culture on our cell phones, and we're all being impacted by the energies of all that we have in front of us every day. And to be in the magic with someone that just is like, I feel all of a sudden I'll think, oh, there's something going on in the throat. Oh, it's not my throat. Wonder if it's Tantra's throat. Oh, well, when I have this, I sometimes drink that. Or is there anything I can offer you? Because it's not mine. And then I get to give an offering of love and compassion and care. And it becomes so not personal. And life often feels so personal. And I think that's what's really important, is to be in the discovery of, oh, it's personal because I feel it, but it's not mine. It gives me information on how I might be able to offer something for someone else in a very beneficial way, in a very loving way, in a very compassionate way. No matter who we are and how we interact, what gifts we've come in with, to pay attention to that awareness, that conscious awareness, the knowing that shows up in our energy field and in our bodies, gives information on how to be more loving and understanding in the world, because we're all in the same world together in many, many ways.
Yeah. And I know you wouldn't say this, but she was really loved by her boys in the psychiatric hospital, prison. And it is that fact that she could pick up on things because she felt them. And if you look at the root of that, one of the things that we watch is that life is to be shared, not avoided. And I've watched a lot of the phenomenon of not empathic response to close yourself off from the world. But don't be a part of the world, hide, protect yourself at all costs. But the problem here is separation. It's not people. And we only have a minute to go, but I kind of want to end it. Thank you, C. I want to let everybody know that what happens with CreateAWorld is after it's done, then our office manager, Christina, she sees data on the screen at the end, and or I'm sorry, in the notes at the bottom. And so her data and my data will be there if you want to contact her or contact me for any reason. I just wanted people to know that. And then it just seems sweet to end with a small story from me, is that I went to see my Shifu in California's awarding of her black belts to her young people. And I went downstairs and was eating, and she brought over a little girl and said, I told her you could answer questions for her about being empathic. And so her mother was brilliant. I got to say, her mother had told her the same thing C just said in the complete detail that C just said. And I said, God, that is just perfect. What a great mom you have. And I said, then the other thing you can do is I said, are you normally happy or sad? And she said, I'm normally happy. And I said, well, then you can send happiness back wherever you feel that someone is sad. And you wouldn't have believed it, because she's working on being a black belt. She's 8 years old. And she said, oh, I can become a empath that's a black belt. in happiness. I, I think that's a great way to leave our call.
It
Thank you.
is.
I was looking
Thank
forward to
you.
this so much, honey. Take
Yeah.
care,
Yeah.
everyone.